Hello.
Hello.
Hello, you're here.
Yes.
I was sat backstage for the last couple of minutes being like, why aren't my friends in the StreamYard?
It's vaguely possible that you don't get to see because you're a guest.
We like to
I'm a
live
second-class
dangerously.
citizen, yeah.
I
In
wasn't
so many
here. I
ways.
was downstairs making a sandwich.
Yes. I mean,
But,
if you want to not be a guest, then next year pay £213.
Yes, we worked out this morning that every episode, like if we were to go to quite an expensive London pub, hello
Yes.
Cosmog, and sit and have a pint while we did this show, the pint would cost less by the end of the year than the StreamYard license.
Yes. Like
Yes.
there's a pub. I won't name it because it's not fair to call it out because London. But yes, the pub just off Oxford Street where I paid £4.75 for a Coke Zero that was mostly ice.
Was it the Shakespeare?
No, it was something Canadian. I think I can't remember, Quebec or something like that. It had lovely, colourful flags up out front, all the colours of the stripes, and the full LGBTQ plus with
the
the
little circle in
triangle
the
at
middle
the
that
end,
protects
and
people,
all of that sort of thing. And I thought, I'm
subsidise
going
that.
with it. I mean, considering I was basically waiting to go and have the hair lasered off my face, I thought that was appropriate. Which really hurts, by the way. Really painful.
I can imagine, and imagining is frankly all I'm ever likely to do because I quite like the hair on my face.
Yeah,
Without it, I look like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Well, having been told by a Russian that I'm the only man he's ever met who looks better without a beard, I'm going to kind of stick with... that's kind of like, yeah.
Does that become partially true or like simply not at all true if you're not a man?
I'm still presenting mostly male at the moment, so yes. But yes, as far as he was aware, at the time, it was a correct statement. So yes, I just want to call out one thing. This is episode number 2.18 or 2.18, I suppose. But I went because it reminded me of the 418, which will be in 2 years' time, which is the HTTP status code for I am a teapot. And I thought, I wonder if there's a 218, and there is an HTTP status 218. This is fine.
Oh dear.
And
it's
how
apropos, yeah.
Yes. But it's used by the Apache web server for when it's in proxy mode, and it's gone. There was an error, but you want to pretend there wasn't an error, and so I'll pass you this 218, which is basically there was an error, but also success.
Don't even worry about it.
Which reminded me slightly of a song that we know. We say the thing had errors and return 200 okay.
Yes.
So
say it works in a restful way, then your errors come back as 200 okay.
That's the one. Yes, thank you.
Yes. That was inspired by a very specific, I can't remember who it was, a payment service that I was integrating with. And they claimed they had a REST API, and they did not. And it one of the many ways in which it was suboptimal was that when things went wrong, you'd get back a 200 OK containing a ball of encrypted XML that if you decrypted it, you would discover that inside it there was an error. And sometimes the error would just be error. And
I like that you said when you decrypted it, as if that was an inevitability. When given how XML gets encrypted, you may very well not have been able to decrypt it.
One of the things that sort of set me and the team on the right track to working out what error meant was decryption errors. And they had not documented anywhere that the signature you generated, they said their XML was case insensitive, and I'm sure they were using a case insensitive XML parser on the other side, but the checksum validator was case sensitive. So the XML had to be properly cased, otherwise the checksum would fail, even though the parser that it then got passed on to. Yeah.
It hurts.
And it was one of those absolute, we're running this over TLS, which is generally held to be pretty secure.
Yeah.
Somebody in one of your meetings thought that wasn't enough and that you needed to do more and that the XML had to be encrypted and signed to stop it getting interfered with.
Somebody read the SAML spec and got ideas.
Yes. And it's one of the things where I'm like, I don't know if because I can picture with zero effort whatsoever, both the kind of engineer who sits in a meeting going, oh, but TLS has been compromised by somebody forum, and they show that they can actually steal your credit card number using a lock of your hair and your microphone. And the boss just went, shut the fuck up, Brian. Go and do whatever you want. I don't care. I don't want to talk to you anymore. But it could just as well have been the boss going, oh, I read in Forbes IT Decision Makers magazine. And Brian went, oh, what the fuck? All right, we don't care. We'll encrypt the XML. Just go away. We've got work to do.
I would rather have my credit card info stolen than have to deal with encrypted XML. I think that's the trade-off.
I mean, yeah, the last time I remember thinking about encrypted XMLs,
it's less effort to like reset all your credit cards.
When I was doing my gRPC workshop,
yep.
And you would get a lot of people who had turned up to the gRPC workshop because they had a massive WCF system that they needed to kind of keep current, and you would sort of there would always be questions at the end about what about WS security, what about WS this, WS that, WS cryptography, or whatever they called it. And it's kind of like, right, we don't need WS cryptography because we're going over TLS. We don't need WS security because we're going over TLS and we can do mutual TLS certificate authentication. And actually all of these have been true of SOAP over HTTP since before any of those WS things were invented.
Yeah.
And you don't need them. And that was just the WS working group going, well, we're having fun. Why stop now? That's what the WS is actually for. It's why stop now. All one word.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
So what have you two been up to this week?
I have been... I'm giving myself crash courses in AI, apart from anything else. And
you've got a fancy smancy job now. You're a
I
CTO
do.
now.
I am the CTO of a mixed reality and AI company, which is just the intersection of so many things that it's going to go one of two ways. And I've placed my bets, but no, I think it could be good. But yes, no, I've been experimenting with my new M3 Max MacBook Pro to see how big a model I can run locally. And 8 billion tokens, parameters, 8 billion parameters. It chunks along at like 40 tokens a second. It's ridiculous. But actually it'll do a 14 billion parameter model. Although that does make the fan turn on. It'll do an 8 billion one on battery with no fan, and it doesn't seem to even hit the battery that much harder.
It's funny, one of the first big projects that I ever did, when I graduated, I was working for a little agency down in Winchester who were doing data-driven websites and online directories and that kind of thing. And we had a client who... the deal was that they bought a new web server. They had it delivered to us. We were going to install all the code on it and put the database on it and get everything going. And then we would drive it up to their office and they would install it in their server cupboard and connect it to the internet. Yeah. And so I had a quite meaty web server just sat under my desk for about 3 months because we sort of figured with all the optimistic naivety of one, it was the year 2000 and I was 22 years old and fresh out of university. I can use that as my development server. Why not? It's not doing anything else. And actually, it was really interesting because it was a Compaq ProLiant or something like that. But it had fans and they were loud. And most of the time, me as one person being the only customer browsing the dev website, it was whisper quiet. And anytime the fan spun, I was like, I just did a bad thing.
Yeah.
And
like the Kill Bill sirens.
Yeah, and it actually was a really immediate feedback. Like you click the button, you're like, oh crap, yeah, that database query needs an index, or that needs a something, or that's looping. And kids today, of course, they don't get that.
No,
because you don't hear the cloud. You never hear the fan spinning up. You just get a bill at the end of the month, by which point you have no idea what you did. So
that's a long feedback loop. Yeah.
In those days, even if you were on the cloud, you could hear it because it was.
There was
noises through the telephone.
No
there
cloud.
There was Microsoft Live Mesh.
No, there wasn't. Not in 2000.
Wasn't there?
No.
Feels like that existed. I don't know.
No. There was. We didn't even have Dropbox. I used to take my work home on a rewritable CD-ROM.
Zip drives.
Yeah, I dabbled with zip drives, but I got click death after a year, and that was the end of that.
Oh well, that'll do it.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Microsoft Live Mesh.
I'm contractually obligated to point out that in 2000 I was 5 or 6 years old.
Well, that's no excuse for not using Microsoft Live Mesh.
No, but if it didn't exist, that would be a good excuse.
So yeah, no, Microsoft bought FolderShare from Byte Taxi Inc. on November the 3rd, 2005. And
what else used to have real
names? It a part of their Windows Live range of services. Yeah,
now they're all called like Poob and Tubi.
Well, they ran out of good names.
Yeah, and E's as well. Everything's like Sparkler with no E on the end or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, we ran out of
files.
E's and stuff. We still apparently have a Surf 8 of OVs. Americans still throwing them all over the place where they don't belong, and way too many exclamation points. Just stop that.
Yeah.
So, how about you? What have you been up to?
Nothing. I have a plan. I'm on timeline number 4. Timeline number 1 was a conference in Poland. Timeline number 2 was a conference in Poland for 5 hours and then an aeroplane to Germany to do a bunch of training with a client out there. Timeline number 3 was all of that, plus also helping my partner renovate her new flat at the same time. And timeline number 4 is stay at home because I got COVID. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like you got COVID. I skinned my knee at DevOps UK, like an 8-year-old. One of our friends got food poisoning, not from the conference, but from somewhere else in London. Brendel, you made it out unscathed and are therefore the last bastion of physical health, I guess, of this podcast.
Apart from the laser.
Yeah,
thing.
actually.
Yeah, but that was entirely voluntary.
Just one of those little kind of, it was funny. I had the kind of week where honestly I woke up feeling like death every day because I had been painting and decorating and lugging equipment around and not sleeping enough. And at some point you just go, I'm supposed to be getting on an aeroplane tomorrow. Maybe I should make sure this isn't just exhaustion. And ping, and you're like, yeah. And 2025, and it's the pandemic is gone in much the same way that if you fire all your testers, you no longer have any bugs. I suspect that this one has been relatively innocuous and seems to be on its way out. The line on the tests is much fainter today.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that means it's come and gone.
Yeah. Odds are you will be in Oslo next week. We hope.
Odds are, yes.
Yes.
We're waiting to see what timeline number 5 has in store.
Well, I have a migraine today, which means I've been mainlining coffee and I've currently got a nicotine tablet going because vasodilators are stopping me from my head from imploding, basically.
What vasodilators do? What? I don't...
More blood.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yeah, they make your veins go bigger, basically. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was also at DevOps UK last week. Not speaking, just in the back.
Just hanging and then playing violin.
Yes.
At the DevOps UK. So this was that was a really good party eventually.
It was fun.
People were into it, yeah.
And it was really nice to do what we do for a bunch of people who've never seen us do it before.
Yeah.
and get that kind of that first timer thing.
The thing
people like not
going,
quite realizing what the deal was, and then
and then it clicks.
And then they start enthusiastically joining in.
So at some point, my greatest frustration with that was the wireless mixing desk that we acquired on the grounds that it was going to solve all of our problems.
Yes.
Has not solved all of our problems. It has given us other problems that we didn't previously have. And I still have no idea what to do about any of it. It basically, by halfway through the show last week, so we got this thing, and actually the piece of kit, it's a Behringer wireless mixing desk, which means it doesn't have any controls on it. It's just got it's just got plugs, sockets,
holes for things to go
holes. And the whole thing is done over Wi-Fi. Using an app. And I don't know whether, so the recommended app for this is an open source thing called Mixing Station. Backpack Vacuum knows about them. No, it is an XR16 Backpack Vacuum, not the X32, but it is the rack mount configuration. And it's like, I don't know whether the problem is the Wi-Fi or the Android tablet or the software or what. But it just does this thing, and the biggest problem is that it tends to be rock solid in sound check because the room is not full of 200 drunk nerds with phones.
Yes.
And then when the room is full of people with their phones, which are on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff, the signal quality just so you can hardwire Ethernet to it as the observation. The problem is the thing on the other end doesn't have an Ethernet jack because it's a tablet.
Yes.
And so at this point, the whole, so we've tried it using its built-in Ethernet, and that's unreliable. We've tried it connecting it to an external Wi-Fi network, and that's unreliable. What we tend to do now is to carry an actual Wi-Fi router. Have you tried asking for advice from people who do gigs professionally?
We don't know people who do gigs professionally.
No, we don't. And this is kind of,
other
than the audio Reddit forum things,
the bigger wireless access point that we were using until you lent it to your girlfriend for her new flat. That worked okay. The weird little thing that was about the size of a Tamagotchi that you brought with you last week didn't. But I also think cheap Android tablet and would probably might work better with an iPad. I don't know. I
mean, when I say cheap, it's a Samsung Galaxy A9, so it's not like a weird.
Oh, right. I thought it was one of those like 10 quid ones that you see on Amazon.
It's actually
actually have silicon.
It has to hit the sweet spot of being expensive enough that you're relatively confident it's not a piece of crap, but cheap enough that when it inevitably gets trodden on in a bar, you're not going
to be heartbroken over it.
Yeah,
I
definitely, there is a category of what I call pub hardware, which is stuff that works well enough to do the gig, but it wouldn't ruin my life if someone spilled a pint of beer on it or stole it. And it's not signed into anything.
To the exception to that. Yeah. But everything else, you want it to be sort of disposable.
Yeah. So no, we've had reasonable results, but it just means that the amount of stuff you have to take to any given venue now includes a proper Wi-Fi router, which is just stupid,
So the only thing I've seen in sort of going off and researching this and stuff is that the Midas version of the same thing apparently has higher quality components, including the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But also that Allen and Heath thing has rock solid Wi-Fi built into it, which
I have relatively little
twice as much money on something.
Tolerance for. Oh no, you spent 500 quid. You should have spent 800 quid.
Yes, and now I spent 1,300.
Because I'm like, well, yeah, but when I spent 200 quid, you told me I should have spent 400. So I spent 500, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
At some point, just no.
If the blocker to wiring up the tablet to the desk is that the tablet doesn't have an Ethernet port, have we just tried an adapter?
I don't own that adapter.
No,
I used to own it. Someone stole it at a gig.
If it's USB-C, I've got like zillions. Like, but even something that contains Ethernet into USB-C, that's
then and still that would then stop the band from adjusting their own mixes.
Yeah,
because it's the same hole.
Yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, the whole point in principle is that everyone has their own phone, and it has a little thing on it that they can use to adjust what they hear in their own ears, which is a lovely idea. And on the occasions when it has worked, it has been delightful. But it is very rare now.
So I was raised to not need that shit. So
Surly Dev has sent me a whisper on Twitch to follow up after the stream, and now I am intrigued. My mind is somewhere else.
The thing that orchestral musicians never have to do is try to sing in key while they're next to a drum kit.
That is true.
I suspect if you took most orchestral musicians and said, right, you stand next to them, these people are 2 feet away, they're shouting at you. Now you go and have a nice little sing.
Someone's never sat in front of the timpani, and it shows.
Yeah, they don't let me do that shit because I can't read the dots.
Yeah, they do for me because I'm a French horn player, and that's why we sit in front of the timpani.
In front of the yes.
But no, it's actually the biggest problem we've had has never been pitch. The biggest problem is being unable to keep time because people can't hear the drums, because the drums aren't real drums. The drums are a laptop. And if you cannot hear the beat, it is very, very hard. And it's even harder when the person next to you is clearly not hearing the beat, but they're playing it enthusiastically anyway.
And we start with AC/DC anyway, every time.
Yeah.
But one thing I was looking at, that I posted a link to it in our Line Breakers Signal group, is there are dedicated devices for doing backing tracks that will also do your video and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing that I liked about that is it's you can sort of put your things on there, and it's got 6 actual distinct outputs, so you can have your click track and your cue track, and your drums can be on a separate track, and you could even put the kick drum on one track and then the rest of the drums on another track, and then you would be able to then you could just like turn the click all the way up as a bass player,
and then we wouldn't have a laptop that doesn't charge except from certain cables to contend with,
and that. So so that's, if I were saving up for something to buy for the band, that would be something I was looking to have a play with next, because that looked pretty cool. And you put the video on there, and it's got HDMI output, and it plays that as well, and it's got Bluetooth and MIDI and all those sorts of things.
For me, it falls into the trap of this replaces your laptop, except you need to travel with the laptop anyway because you're going to a software conference, and so it doesn't actually replace anything.
Well, can you get your laptop to play the click on a separate channel?
Yes,
from the drums.
If you really want me to, I can.
I really, really want you to, because of 7-bit encoding.
Yes,
and a couple of others actually that we have, where
we have. So we've actually done shows where we used a stereo mix with a click in the left channel and everything else in the right, and then we just send the right channel to the front of house, which is like a very low rent isolated mix. And then when I built the setup for Guitarioke, I used 5.1 mixes of everything, with the click being sent on, or with the instruments on separate isolated channels, and a little 5.1, like Dolby USB audio interface.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we do.
I'm not going to because it's a shitload of work, but I could. Well, I'm not going to.
Could.
Yeah.
But no, we do actually have a gig next week in Oslo. We are not playing at NDC for the first time in a while.
NDC doesn't love us anymore.
NDC doesn't love us anymore, although they are still letting me do the closing thing, the lock note, despite London. So we have done, last year we had a very successful little gig at Brugata, which is a pub just over the road from Spectrum, and we're doing it again because we said, can we do it again? And they went, we sold a lot of beer, and not all of it to programmers.
No,
at least quite a lot of it to what do they call those people who work on oil rigs? They have a name like like they don't call them tree cutter downers, they call them lumberjacks, and there's a word for people who work on oil rigs.
I know.
I think
there are a bunch of words floating through my mind, but I'm not going to say any of them because I'm not sufficiently confident I've remembered the right word, that it's not some sort of slur.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Niles
There we
says
go.
that's the word I was thinking of.
Yes, roughnecks, like the flasks.
Yeah.
For that you had your packed lunch thing in when we were kids.
So we'll be at Brugata on Friday night doing the Linebreakers Oslo NDC after party.
Yeah,
which should be fun.
No ticketed entry. Just turn up
And buy beer.
Squeeze in and buy beer.
Yeah,
it'll be my first time flying with the violin at all.
Hey.
And I'll be taking it as carry-on, and I'm really hoping nobody takes issue with me taking it as carry-on.
So what you have to realize, and I've learned this the hard way, is that the vast majority of airline and airport employees are stuck in a horrible gray area where they don't have the authority to say yes, but they don't get paid enough to actually stop you.
Yes.
And so if you ask them, they have to say no, because that's...
But I'm not going to ask. I'm just
no,
going
you
to
don't ask.
Yeah. One of my mundane superpowers is, like, I can germinate any seed and, like, all of these things. I can make any member of airport staff wish just a little bit that they were my dad. And I think this is going to come into play. I've got that whimsy and sense of joy and kindness, and also I'm not going to make their lives more difficult.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah.
The magic words that you'll need to know in case of anybody having issue with it are, I will check it at the gate with the push chairs.
Yes.
Because that way they're like, all right, fine, you know what you're doing. We will let you keep your instrument with you. And then when you get to the gate, you, of course, say nothing about this. I have flown long haul with an acoustic guitar before. The BA staff just went, oh, should we put that in the locker with the crew's coats? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I could also say it has a battery in it. So
yeah. Also, yes,
headless bass in its kind of gig bag fits quite nicely on top of 3 sort of cabin bags, and just fits up in the overhead thing. And it's one of those ones where everybody, before you get through security, is just like, oh no, no, that's a weird shaped thing, and they're not going to do. And then when you actually get to the plane, nobody says anything. Nobody says what you're going to do. And obviously an acoustic is not going to fit in the overhead.
I'm not taking much else for carry-on anyway, because I have to check a bag anyway. So
but also decide in advance whether, if it comes down to it, you are going to walk away from the flight or throw away the violin. Because that's the decision you might find you are being forced to make in the heat of the moment.
And if you already walk away from the flight, rebook and ship the violin. And just eat the cost.
So often when I see passengers having a meltdown in the airport, I'm like, you didn't realize you were going to have to decide what to do under these conditions, did you? Like you hadn't worked the options, and here you are.
Clinical anxiety coming through again.
And they're like, there is no option 3. You do this or you do that. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Yes.
I think
so I'm doing a new talk next week, and it's all Randall's fault. And at the moment, I am. So I thought a lovely way of demonstrating. It's a talk about algorithms, where I, with all due respect to the great profession of mathematics, I am trying to punch through the astonishing amount of gatekeeping maintained by the people who write the Wikipedia articles about algorithms, because they're all written in maths.
Yes.
And people with jobs can't read maths. And you look at it.
It's true. I'm actually secretly unemployed.
You look at it, and you're like, what? No. So let me. So there's a thing called Bresenham's algorithm, and I want to tell you, Bresenham's algorithm is a magic spell for working out what pixels to color in. That is what it is. That's what it actually does. But if you look it up on Wikipedia, let me give you the 1-sentence summary. Bresenham's line algorithm is a line drawing algorithm, that determines the points of an n-dimensional raster that should be selected in order to form a close approximation to a straight line between 2 points. And I like n-dimensional in there is like, somebody wants to be a completionist, and n-dimensional, in theory, Bresenham's algorithm abstracts to higher dimensional spaces for all those people who have 5-dimensional monitors in their house and need to figure out which ones of their quixels to color in. But most of us are like, no.
I mean,
Rendell's CTO of an AR company.
I am, yeah.
But
so,
VR headsets,
we have to draw lines in the 3D space sometimes, but it's,
yeah, but you don't draw lines in the line in a 3D space is a 3-dimensional projection that's flattened into 2 dimensions and then pixelated. It's then rasterized. There was a brief thing in the 90s for something called voxel technology, which was volumetric modeling using 3-dimensional pixels, which didn't really catch on because using triangles and meshes turned it out just to be way faster, and graphics cards were good at it.
Yes.
And actually, so as 07 Rain says, in defense of Wikipedia, it's an encyclopedia, not a reference manual. And look, someone, best viewers on streamboo.com. God, I fucking hate the internet. The thing, I don't know. The problem with Wikipedia is that, it's an encyclopedia, which means no one knows who it's written for. Because to do something like describing an algorithm, you kind of need to figure out first who your target audience is. Is it people who are implementing it? Is it researchers trying to understand its complexity? Is it undergraduates cramming for a final that they have tomorrow? But, I think so often this comes up in Advent of Code every year. You get a problem comes up and people are looking and somebody says, you can solve that using the Hungarian algorithm. And they look it up on Google and the first hit is Wikipedia. And suddenly there's this wall of mathematics. And
it's
they're
like, do I actually need to understand, optimization theory in order to apply this?
No.
Yeah.
No,
we had this last week because Rendell and I were talking about the talk that we're going to do in Copenhagen, which is weird bits of crystography, and I will do the maths. Rendell will do the code. We'll both do the jokes.
Yes.
And I was teaching them about elliptic curves for not quite first principles, but you Rendell were reading through the Wikipedia page and going, look at all of these words that are just 5-syllable mathematical terms, and I'm like, I know what these mean. I can explain them to you in vibes.
It was to do with like complex numbers in a finite field, and all
I gave you the vibes-based explanation of why elliptic curves work for encryption. Sort of.
The thing that threw me on that is that there's like because I thought every kind of private key was a different curve, but it's not. It's all the same curve, or there's like 5 or something that they
there's
found,
like a bunch
but it's
of
okay
good
for
curves.
You to use.
Yes, and people get really people go, ooh, NIST have put backdoors in this or something.
Yes, but it's because there's like the SEC P19287 or something is one of them, and that's the one that everyone's using the same curve. So yes, but no, they did do a very good job of explaining it to me, and I am looking forward to attempting to code any of this.
I'm debating what I'm going to wear for that talk, because I could go the lab coat route, or I could go the maths professor with the tweed jacket and the elbow patches,
right,
and the bow tie.
Yeah.
Is it particularly splashy cryptography such that would necessitate the wearing of a lab coat to avoid getting the vectors on you? Yeah.
So yes,
algorithms.
Algorithms. And you've been having fun trying to find a pub crawl.
Yeah, so Dijkstra's algorithm has a wonderful way of explaining it by getting barred from a series of pubs and having to find the next nearest pub that will still let you go in with your mates to have a drink. And by the time you've been thrown out of every pub in Bristol, you now know the shortest path from every pub to every other pub. And I started out trying to do this with an actual map of Bristol, which is a very interesting city because it's got a lot of water. And so there's a lot of places in Bristol which are quite close as the crow flies, but quite a long way if you're walking from one to the other, as anyone who's ever done a old maritime pubs of Bristol pub crawl will know. But it turns out Bristol's quite complicated and does not lend itself to explaining Dijkstra's algorithm to a room full of people. And so I've been simplifying it and trying to come up with a fictitious sort of town layout, which is optimized for demonstrating Dijkstra's algorithm.
Have you named your fictitious town?
It's called Pubstow.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, because of course it is. Yeah.
What you need is an algorithm for working out the optimum layout to demonstrate.
So it is
Dijkstra's algorithm.
I have thought of that. That has definitely been, because the fun part about putting together things like slides for presentations is, so I've just done, I wanted a demonstration of merge sort, which I wanted to do with a deck of cards. And at that point, I'm like, right, there are 3 ways to do this. One of them is to film an actual person sorting an actual deck of cards and then tweak the film speed footage and everything. So, and it's like, all right, I've got loads of decks of cards. I could get some green bays. I've got the lights. I've got the cameras. I've got all those kinds of things. Another way would be to build it in something like After Effects using, post-production visualization, all that kind of stuff. And then I thought, actually, this is mostly, what I want is mostly algorithmic. I can, by knowing the value of a card, I know which coordinates on the screen it needs to end up at in the final result. All I need to do is make them move nicely. And
you
so
already
I started
have
playing around.
the assets for a deck of cards.
And there is an open source set of PNGs of all the playing cards, which of course I doctored because the Ace of Spades always has to be special. So I found out why that is, by the way. I was going down this rabbit hole, and the reason why the Ace of Spades is always so ornate is that it used to be where the customs and excise stamp would be placed to show that you had paid the duty on your gaming cards, because manufacturing cards without paying duty was a crime.
Yes.
And
they
so
were a controlled
they were
medium.
And then in 1862, they switched to a threepenny wrapper tax instead of stamp duty, which
Is
meant...
this going in the talk?
No.
It's going in a different talk for next year.
And then the wonderful thing that I sort of poking around all these options is CSS has transitions, and it has transition easing curves, and it has transition delays. So
I know about those.
If you take a bunch of PNGs and you put them on a canvas or just put them on a div and you say, right, move all those to there, but then each card has been programmed to have a different transition delay, what you get is this nice smooth animation of the cards one by one moving into a sorted deck. And it's like so much of that already exists, but the process of kind of knowing what you want on the screen and working outwards from there in every possible direction, it's fun, but you don't find a lot of rabbit holes along the way.
Sounds like fodder for another talk.
It does.
Yes,
Although
which Dylan discovers that PowerPoint transitions are Turing complete.
We know that. So actually, PowerPoint just got a new transition, and it's excellent. It did. It's called Morph. And what Morph does is you take a slide and you duplicate it, and then on the duplicate, you just move things around, and anything that was on the old slide and is on the next one will just move, like it'll slide nicely from where it was to where it is, and anything new will fade in, and anything that's gone will fade out. And it has saved me so much time.
Does sound... That's like tweening, effectively.
Yeah. It's basically, you can use your slides as animation keyframes and it'll tween them for you automatically.
Because I've watched other people doing talks and seen that effect. For example. And gone, how does he do these things? Who shows him these things? And now apparently they've built it in, and so I can look as good as you.
Yeah.
Well, better because you don't have a beard.
Well, no, Dylan looks better with a beard.
Yes.
I look better without a beard.
I have seen myself without a beard. It's not a good look.
That's obvious to anyone who actually knows me. But yeah. The thing. Oh, God, something.
The whole
my mind.
The whole point of slide design is I have presentations now where They'll be like, the first two things you see moving are done in PowerPoint, and then on the third click, it plays a piece of video, and people can't see the joins. And when I was younger, I wanted to work in film special effects. When I was at university, I was absolutely going to get a job in Industrial Light and Magic. And one of the wonderful things that you realize about the way they do movie effects is the individual shots tended to be very, very short. Certainly back in the days of practical effects. And the secret was being able to go from a sort of a mock-up of the interior of the Millennium Falcon cockpit, which obviously has to be big enough for real people to be in it saying their lines, but it doesn't need like a roof or a front or anything. It just needs a backdrop and some lights. And then you cut, and it stays on that for just long enough that you focus on the dialogue, and then it cuts to an external shot of what is probably a 3-foot-long wooden model. But your brain just kind of papers over the cracks, and it all looks wonderfully consistent. And
yes.
Yeah. When people started nerding out in a massive way and rewinding and replaying their VHS tapes to try to work out how long and how big all the ships were so they could put it in a book, they realized that a lot of the time they just vary massively. Like the Excelsior Superstar Destroyer is either 7 kilometers or 12 kilometers or 15 kilometers long, depending which shot you're looking at. Because all ILM were doing, look, it's really big, all right? It's a really, really big, pointed spaceship. Huge. And people are like, yes, but if you calculate the arc of the Death Star, as you can see in the bottom of this frame of the VHS cassette of the remastered special, and you're like, no, it's just supposed to be really big.
Again, you go from like it's vibes based, and then you have people trying to quantify.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen the land speeder thing? The thing that they drive into Mos Eisley, and in the original like 1977 Star Wars, it's going along in the desert, and it looks like it's floating, and you're just kind of like, how did they do that? Did they like hand draw in the desert? Did they do this? Did they do that? They put a mirror. Along the bottom of the thing, and it reflected the desert that they were going along, and hid the wheels very effectively.
It is. There are so many.
A scene when they're in Mos Eisley where they actually stuck the thing on the end of a kind of very heavily cantilevered like thing and just moved it, and so it goes in this very slight curve, and apparently it took 2 days to set up for 3 seconds of them pulling up outside the cantina or something.
There's the absolute pioneer of this stuff was Douglas Trumbull, who was the effects unit director on 2001 and directed Silent Running. And 2001, A Space Odyssey, there's that sequence where they're flying to the moon on the Pan Am shuttle. And I love the fact that there is one point in it where the cabin stewardess walks into a circular rotating airlock and just walks around onto the ceiling and then walks out. And they did that by building a rotating set.
Yes.
They put the entire interior set of the Pan Am shuttle inside something that could spin. So they would spin the camera with the set, and the actress would walk around.
But then there's another for Inception as well, I think.
Yeah. There's a couple of shots in Inception where they did the same thing.
Oh, the fight in the corridor.
Yeah, which is brilliant. Yeah.
But then there's another shot in 2001 where they're in zero gravity, and her biro, just kind of floats across the cabin. And they did that by gluing it to a bit of glass and waving the glass in front of the camera. And I love the sort of utilitarianism of what is the cheapest way of forget, backstory. This is the shot we need. This needs to be on the screen for this many seconds. And when it's there, we are done. And it doesn't matter if we never use that setup ever again, or if it becomes a part of every shot that we do for the rest of the history of Industrial Light and Magic. How do we get the shot?
There was a wonderful thing that they used to do. And again, this has gone the way of all flesh, where if they needed a long shot, the thing I was watching when I found out about this was actually about the making of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV series. And there is a long shot of Arthur and Ford standing in the Vogon hold. And I mean, it's, they are tiny little down in the corner of the screen thing. And then there's just this thing. And the way they used to do that was they would get a piece of glass and somebody would hand paint all of the rest of the scene on there, and then they would film the actors and they would make it so it joined up with the edge of the actual practical set, and then they would just film the actors through that bit of glass. And you see, there are times every now and then when I see this in old movies and TV shows, and you kind of pause it and you go, somebody hand painted that. That is a hand painted, like the seafront of somewhere or whatever it might be. And and there are some marvelous skills and some marvelous kind of hacky workarounds and solutions to problems that computers basically just killed. And I think there was a sense of wonder, like going to see some of those, even just the crappy B movies like The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman in the 1950s or 40s, whenever that was. And there must have been a sense of, it looks like people say about, and how did they do that, and all this.
The Wizard of Oz. When she steps into, and there's all color and like the sort of people going, oh my god, you could do that, like that, that we
whereas now
we've lost that a little bit.
You can literally put anything you want on the screen, to the point where like Tom Cruise is kind of going, no, I am actually going to ride a motorcycle off the Burj Khalifa because I'm Tom Cruise and I can do what I want.
And we as the audience just go, yeah, sure.
It's and you see Tom Cruise riding a motorbike off the Burj Khalifa, and you just go, "It's green screen."
I wonder if theatre is the place where this kind of stuff is still happening, where people are sort of,
possibly,
because there's no faking it with computers.
There was a lovely quote from somebody who was working with him on the Mission Impossible films, and it was something like this guy turns up he's the stunt coordinator on it, and they're like, Tom is explaining the makeup, and the guy goes, oh, no, we can't do that. And he turns and goes, no, let me tell you how this works. On my movies, I know the films you're used to, if you say it isn't going to work, they come up with a different stunt. On my movies, if you say it isn't going to work, we get a different stunt coordinator. And the guy goes, all right, and off they go. And apparently working with him is a constant, did we kill Tom Cruise today? Yes or no?
The insurance must be a nightmare.
I think they've just got to a point where they're like, it's. I mean, what are you insuring?
Yeah,
at that point.
And I mean, I'm kind of hoping that if I get to the end of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and it says Tom Cruise will return or Ethan Hunt will return, I am burning something down on my way home.
I want him to die live on camera. Actually,
that would be that's the only way that you can
attitude towards stunts.
Yeah. But I came out of Fast 10, and what would it be called? Ex media res. If something finishes in the middle. But yes, because it's like with the Matrix Reloaded. You knew that was part of a two-parter. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. It's kind of like, there's going to be a Part 2. And Hunger Games Mockingjay. But no, Fast 10 just put itself out there as Fast 10. And you were kind of like, well, that seems like a nice round number to wrap the series up on. Even Friday the 13th didn't dare go past 10. And then, it just finishes with everybody sort of in a thing, and this person's upside down over a vat of boiling acid with the penguin going, and whatever. Oh, no, that was a different movie. But anyway,
spiritually very similar, though. I had exactly the same experience with Fast 10 because I was like, hell yeah, another Fast 10. Like perfect. 2 hours of just getting drunk and watching some people do some really silly stuff. And Jason Momoa's even in it. And then it's like, well, I feel like I've got blue balls now. I need to wait however many years it's going to be for the next one.
So and that's the thing. It's kind of like you should at least have it ready to roll. You should have finished.
The Fast and the Furious inspired what I think is one of the greatest ideas I've ever had. Because, Hollywood, we've done prequels, we've done sequels, we've done remakes, we've done reboots, we've done reimaginings. It's the antiquel. It's a film which is the opposite of the original film, but made with the same cast. So the antiquel to The Fast and the Furious is The Slow and the Serious. And it's a film, it's very slow. It's in black and white, very little dialogue, no soundtrack, nothing. Vin Diesel rides across the Netherlands on a cow. That's it.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
And it's basically shot in real time. It's just him on his cow, and the only sound is, the clanking
which he
cowbell.
owns.
And does he own a cow?
Well, no, but he would have to own the cow. He would, because if he stole the cow,
it could open with him. He could buy the cow from Morgan Freeman.
See him purchasing the cow for a fair price.
Yes,
and not installing any mods.
Yeah.
Can you mod
this cow is not allowed one of those stomach ports.
I think they make their own nitro. So
see, now I'm gonna be thinking of other
the opposite of Star Wars would be
ground pieces.
Ground piece. It's Anakin Skywalker goes fishing with his kids and
stays on the farm.
Yeah, that's it.
I think I've read that fan fiction.
So interestingly, you put something on our Trello board about Apple TV sucking.
Yeah,
I was putting something on our Trello board about the fact that I appear to now own almost the complete set of Apple stuff.
Yes,
because I now own an iPhone and an iWatch and an iLaptop and an iDesktop and an iTV and an iPad. And that's apart from the iWear Vision thing.
Oh, that's gone. That's finished. They pretend that never happened. No.
Well,
Apple never made a headset.
No.
Look into the Neuralizer.
Why would they do that?
Yeah.
But yes, and then because I did, the Apple TV was the last thing to get added.
Yeah.
And I added it because there are apps that are available on Apple TV that are not available on the NVIDIA Shield. Specifically, iPlayer, All 4, and Dropout TV.
Interesting.
I will say the NVIDIA Shield, which is kind of, it's like 8-year-old technology. It's got the same chip in it as the original Switch. And scrolling through things in Netflix or Prime or whatever, it's a damn sight faster on the Android versions than it is on the Apple TV version. It is sluggish.
So I have reached the point where my television, which is a 10-year-old Samsung flat screen, is very occasionally used to receive broadcast TV, but its smart features are now so old that none of them work anymore. So Netflix no longer supports the Netflix app that runs on my TV. Amazon shut theirs down. 4OD doesn't work. BBC iPlayer still works, and YouTube sort of works. But 90% of the time, all I'm doing is casting from my phone to the TV to watch it that way.
Yeah.
So I've got the TV, but then in the back, I've got a little Google Chromecast, and I've got an Apple TV hooked up to it. And the Chromecast will, for Netflix, for Disney Plus, for Amazon Prime Video, you just say, play this on the TV, it plays it on the TV, and then you can use your phone to do other stuff while you're watching TV, which is great. This week, I have been watching a lot of television on account of sit around at home and don't do anything. And I caught up on basically all of the everything. So all of the Black Mirror, I'm up to date, all of the Andor, I watched all of that. And then I was like, there's a new season of Slow Horses, which is on Apple TV. Now, the thing about Apple TV is that when you are casting Apple TV, so one Apple TV won't cast a Chromecast, obviously, because reasons. It will cast to the Apple TV, but then if anything happens on your phone which wants to play a video, like opening just about any web page that exists in 2025, it stops the video that's casting to the TV so that it can play the one in the advert on the web page you're reading. Yeah. And I'm like, how did you bollocks this up so badly?
I think
how does Apple TV on an Apple phone streaming to an Apple TV device with an Apple subscription watching Apple content produced by Apple suck harder than using an Apple device to stream Disney content to a Google device plugged into a Samsung television, which just works beautifully?
Yes.
It surprises me. Apple normally do better than that.
Oh, I forgot the other thing that I have, which is the iMusic Pod thing.
Yes,
the HomePod, iHome thing, which so in between getting that and then getting the Apple TV, I was kind of like, well, I can use that to listen to my audiobooks while I'm going to sleep and stuff, and that was all very nice. And then I set up the Apple TV. I have to say the setup process is extremely good, because it goes, you can either do this, and this, or you can wave your phone at it and it'll just magic, and you kind of go, what, like, oh bloody hell. So I'd done all of that, and then it was going through the on-screen setup process, and it went, I see you have a HomePod, would you like me to use that as a sound bar? And I was kind of like, yeah, go on then, it's got to be better than the TV, which it is, except that it now no longer shows up as a HomePod by itself. It's just
it has been assimilated.
It has been assimilated by the TV.
We are Apple.
And so now
resistance is futile.
I kind of go, oh, I'm going to
no. We are Apple. Resistance is fruitile.
But yeah. I go, oh, I'm going to cast this music to the HomePod, and the Apple TV goes, right, I'll turn the telly on then. And you're kind of like, that's not necessary. We don't need you to turn the telly on. And then you turn the telly off, and HDMI CEC turns to the Apple TV and goes, he's turned the telly off. You should probably turn yourself off as well. And you go, why? So, and there is no, but, and as Stephen Brown in the chat is saying, this is the company that made Xcode.
So Stephen Brown has also, and I just pinned this, there is a fanfic that Han Solo literally dreams up Indiana Jones. There's better than that. There is an official canon one-pager from the Star Wars comic book.
Is that still canon? They mixed a lot of expanded universe.
Legends.
Oh, that's canon.
In which Han Solo and Chewbacca have to make an emergency uncharted hyperspace jump and travel through time and space and crash land in the American Northwest at the start of the 20th century. And the final panel is Chewbacca off in the distance looking suspiciously like Bigfoot, while Indiana Jones discovers Han Solo's skeleton in the forest.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called Into the Great Beyond, I think.
See,
it's just one of those weird little crossovers that makes you go, ooh.
So they could have, he could have been found and adopted by Sean Connery.
You can write that fan fiction.
Who was out walking the dog.
I will help you sign up to Archive of Our Own.
Yeah, let's stick it on Wattpad. Yes.
Kieran has a YouTube that keeps asking to cast to a device owned by their flatmate.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah, so much fun with just random people leaving their Netflix account signed into hotel televisions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's
much more fun when Pornhub asks that, though. Obviously. Would you like to cast this to your nan's TV? Oh, no, she's not into this particular kink.
Both of my grandmothers are dead. So
yeah.
Like, oh, really? You've developed that now, have you?
Yeah. So that's a different website.
Yes. But anyway. Right. So,
yes, that's
that
about
just about wraps it up for this week, doesn't it?
Gothmog's gone, so the podcast is over, basically.
Yeah. There are fewer password sharing. There's the thing I like about this, the chat thing, sometimes is you get people who've obviously turned up 10 minutes late and started watching from the start.
Yeah.
And so it becomes asynchronous. It's like an eventually consistent chat.
Yes.
And by the time everything's arrived, you could kind of hook the things up to the right time points and stuff. But yeah, there's people talking about things. So, but we will finish with the observation that Origami Marie had a ceiling fan that turned itself on at night because the remotes all used the same frequency that went through the walls. Yes.
And we're back to the Wi-Fi problem again.
This is the Wi-Fi problem. And
Shout out to everyone who has ever put their Wi-Fi router on top of the microwave.
I have. I remember when I found out that microwaves are at 2.4 gigahertz, and it made so many things make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the sort of why the Netflix spinner shows up when somebody goes off to make a cup of hot milk. I mean, just kind of like, why is this? What are you doing and stuff? So yes.
Did I ever tell you the story of the computer that only worked when it was sideways?
No.
This was I built a gaming machine for my brother out of scavenged bits when he was a teenager, and put it all together, and 24-hour burn-in test, memtest 8.6, everything absolutely rock solid. Drive it up to Bristol, give it to him, and next day he phones me and it's like it won't stay on. I switch it on and it crashes after 10 minutes every time. And so I drive up and we take it apart and we check everything and we run another burn-in test. It's absolutely rock solid. And I go home and it doesn't work. And this goes on for about a week. And this thing passes every single diagnostic we can throw at it. And then when you try to use it to play a game or do anything normal, it just crashes. And we eventually figured out that the common denominator was when we were troubleshooting it, we had it up on the desk on its side, which meant the heatsink was pressing the processor down vertically into its own socket. When you went to play games on it, it went on the floor, upright, and there was a little bit of wear and tear on the CPU socket, and it wasn't holding the heatsink on quite firmly enough, which meant the weight of the massive heatsink and fan was just pulling it away, and it took about 10 minutes for the CPU to get up to 105 degrees Celsius and then shut down.
Your computer had pots.
And the only way that we discovered it was that while taking it apart, we noticed that the little AMD Athlon sticker was actually charred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I got to drop off.
Yes,
so
I think we're probably done. I got to go
basically
and a pub crawl. So thank you for tuning in, folks. Next week we'll be.
We'll see if we can do one live from Oslo.
I think at this exact point
next
week, I'm going to be doing the tech behind the line breakers, telling everyone how the line breakers works, which they then won't be able to see at the NDC party, which strikes me as a particularly odd piece of scheduling.
Yeah. Well, I will find people and I will sit us round at my laptop and we'll do a thing.
I'll bring my
from the back of Dylan's talk.
It's not like we need to know about the tech behind the line breakers or anything.
Yeah, no, I know about the tech behind the line breakers.
No, you don't. Not all of it.
All right, I'm leaving. Bye.
Okay.
Love you all.
Bye. Bye.
See you next week, folks.
See you next
Take
week.
it easy.
Bye.
Ooh. We hit the end button.